Most people are chasing success the wrong way. They're not lacking desire or ambition. They're lacking clarity, commitment, and understanding. We live in a world saturated with advice, morning routines, productivity, hacks, motivational speeches, but real transformation that comes from within. It starts not with what you do, but with who you believe you are. And that's the core of this 6-month success plan. A deep, intentional journey that doesn't just change your schedule, it rewires your mindset. Bob Proctor once said, "You were born rich. You have deep reservoirs of talent and ability within you." But most people never tap into them because they've been trained to look outward for validation and answers. This plan, unlike the countless superficial systems online, demands that you look inward, uncomfortably, consistently, honestly. Think of the next 6 months not as a to-do list, but as a personal revolution. Not a sprint, but a reprogramming of the mental paradigms that have kept you stuck in patterns of hesitation, fear, and self-sabotage. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to be small. The first truth is this: every person who's ever transformed their life did so by first changing their mind. It's never about more effort. It's about better alignment. You don't need more hours in your day. You need more power in your thoughts. And that begins on day 1. In month 1, the focus isn't on massive action. It's on awareness. Deep, honest, piercing awareness. What beliefs are running your life? Are they even yours? So many people are chasing success with a subconscious belief that they're unworthy of it. That's like trying to sail with an anchor dug into the ocean floor. No wonder you feel like you're moving in circles. Here's a question most never ask themselves. What do I actually believe about success? Not what you say you believe, but what your results say you believe. If there's a gap between your goals and your current reality, there's a belief gap beneath it. Your results tell you what your paradigm is, Proctor taught. That means you don't need to guess what you believe. Just look at your life. So the first 30 days are about excavation, journaling, meditation, silence. Not the kind of silence that numbs you, the kind that reveals you. Who are you beneath the noise? What patterns keep showing up in your relationships, finances, health, or something? The first step to change is not action, it's recognition. And awareness isn't passive, it's the most powerful form of inner work. Because once you see the lie, you can't keep living it. This inner clarity will set the foundation for month 2, which shifts from awareness to alignment. Because awareness without realignment is just insight without evil. You now start replacing the old narrative with conscious intention. This is where vision work begins. Not just visualizing a better life, but stepping into the identity of the person who already lives it. You don't get what you want, you get who you are. That's the principle of energetic alignment. If you want extraordinary outcomes, you need to embody extraordinary beliefs. Bob Proctor often reminded us that you can only attract to you what you're in harmony with. That means it's not enough to set goals. You have to become emotionally and mentally aligned with the version of you that already lives in that result. During month 2, your daily habits begin to reflect this identity shift. But we're not talking about robotic routines or over-optimization. We're talking about aligned action, the kind that feels natural because it's coming from belief, not just willpower. Willpower fades. Identity endures. You wake up differently when you're becoming someone new. You speak differently, eat differently, think differently, not because you're forcing change, but because it now feels incongruent not to. The old version of you begins to dissolve, not through pressure, but through truth. You start to realize that procrastination isn't laziness, it's misalignment. You are never resisting the work. You are resisting the disconnection between your inner world and your outer goals. By the end of the 2nd month, you'll notice a subtle shift. The world hasn't changed, but your perception of it has. That's the tipping point. Because when your perception changes, your decisions change. And your life is just a collection of decisions stacked over time. Month 3 begins the phase of movement. Not frantic, chaotic action, but inspired direction. This is the stage where the internal foundation you've built starts becoming visible externally. You've gone from seeking clarity to cultivating congruence. Now comes the phase of momentum. This is where many people get stuck because momentum requires trust. You won't have all the answers. You won't see the whole staircase, but now you understand that you don't need to. Bob Proctor called this faith in action, moving without evidence, trusting the vision more than the circumstance. It's not naive, it's powerful, because every great success story began in the unknown. During month 3, the challenge is not discipline, it's sustainability. Can you stay consistent when results aren't immediate? Can you trust the process when you're only halfway through? This is the month that tests your emotional resilience. You'll want to quit. Your old beliefs will whisper that maybe you're not cut out for this. But now, unlike before, you won't believe them. You've done the work. You know who you're becoming. It's also during this period that you start experiencing small external wins. Not massive success, but confirmation. A new opportunity. A conversation that opens a door. A habit that sticks. These are signals. Evidence that the internal shift is now creating external ripples. You begin to trust yourself in a way you never did before, not because things are easy, but because you're no longer negotiating with your potential. This is the halfway point. And what you've done so far isn't about results. It's about readiness. You're becoming the kind of person who doesn't just achieve goals, but sustains success. That's the difference. Most people can reach something once. Few can live there. Why? Because they didn't change their inner thermostat. They upgraded the strategy without upgrading the identity. That's not what we're doing here. This 6-month success plan is not about the next achievement. It's about building the version of you who lives in alignment with your purpose. Because when that happens, success isn't something you chase. It's something you attract. As the 4th month begins, something subtle but powerful happens. The external starts to mirror the internal. Not in grand, cinematic ways, but in quiet affirmations. A stranger echoes a thought you've been meditating on. A long-delayed opportunity resurfaces. You wake up feeling lighter, not because the world is easier, but because you've become stronger. This isn't coincidence. It's SC calibration. You're finally operating in alignment with who you were meant to be. But with growth comes new tension. Month 4 introduces friction, not from failure, but from expansion. You're doing things you've never done before. Saying no to people you used to accommodate. Holding boundaries. Speaking dreams out loud that used to live only in journals. And that's where resistance shows up. Not from outside critics, but from the remnants of your old self. The voice that says, don't get too far ahead. Stay safe. Stay small. Bob Proctor called this the terror barrier, the invisible wall that appears just as you begin stepping into your next level. Most people hit that wall, he said, and they bounce back to safety. But the winners, they break through it. This month, your challenge is not to avoid fear, but to reframe it. Fear is not the enemy. It's a signal, a sign that you're approaching the edge of who you've been and glimpsing who you're becoming. So don't run from it. Lean into it. Celebrate it. When the fear shows up, say, good, I must be doing something right. It's during this phase that your success plan shifts from linear progress to exponential growth. The effort feels lighter, not because you're working less, but because you're no longer carrying the weight of internal conflict. Your mind and actions are aligned, and alignment breeds acceleration. By now, your daily rituals have become more than habits. They're non-negotiable. You no longer need to force yourself to show up. You want to, because you've realized that consistency is no longer about discipline. It's about identity. You are someone who moves, who creates, who leads. And the world is beginning to notice. This is also the stage where clarity crystallizes. Those vague ideas from month 1 have become sharp. You can articulate your purpose with precision, not because you've memorized the mission statement, but because you've lived it. Purpose isn't a sentence you write. It's a rhythm you embody. And now your life has rhythm. Month 5 is where you step into ownership. You've done the inner excavation, built aligned habits, pushed past the terror barrier. Now it's time to lead. Not necessarily others, but yourself, fully and unapologetically. Leadership isn't a title. It's a posture. It's the way you take responsibility for your energy, your choices, your impact. Bob Proctor often spoke about responsibility as the ultimate key to freedom. The moment you accept responsibility for everything in your life, he said, is the moment you gain the power to change anything in your life. And now, more than ever, you're ready to claim that power. This is when your goals evolve. You're no longer chasing success to prove something. You're creating from wholeness, not from lack. That changes everything. Your work becomes more meaningful. Your presence more intentional. You're no longer addicted to outcomes. You're grounded in process. Ironically, that's when the outcomes start arriving faster. This fifth month is also when opportunities begin to scale. What once felt like distant dreams now show up as conversations, collaborations, doors you didn't even know existed. But here's the twist. You're no longer surprised, because this version of you expects greatness, not from arrogance, but from alignment. It's not luck. It's the natural result of living in harmony with your vision. But with new levels come new responsibilities. Can you maintain your inner peace when the noise grows louder? Can you stay grounded when recognition arrives? This is where many fall, not because they failed, but because they succeeded without internal stability. That's why this plan wasn't built on hacks or shortcuts. It was built on foundation, so that when the growth comes, you're not just ready, you're rooted. And that leads us into the final month. Month 6 is not about finishing. It's about transitioning. This journey doesn't end at the 6th month. It evolves, but this month holds a unique power integration. It's where you pause, reflect, and intentionally anchor everything you've learned. This is the month of embodiment. You're no longer studying success. You're living it. Not in every moment, not perfectly, but consistently enough that it's become your new baseline. And now you get to ask a different question. What's next? Because here's the truth. Success is not a destination. It's a direction. It's not one goal checked off. It's a way of being that opens the door to infinite expansion. You don't decide your purpose, Bob Proctor said. You discover it, and discovery never ends. There's always another layer, another challenge, another version of you waiting to be activated. So month 6 isn't about resting on progress. It's about honoring it, celebrating the internal, not just what you did, but who you became. That's the real success. Becoming someone who is unshakable in your truth, resilient in your challenges, and generous in your growth. You now live with a deeper level of self-trust. You've seen what happens when you commit, really commit, not in short bursts of motivation, but in long, uncomfortable stretches of discipline. Now that growth isn't they always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like waking up with peace, choosing stillness, speaking less, but meaning more. And perhaps the most profound shift of all, you've stopped waiting for permission. You no longer need the world to validate your dreams, because you've validated yourself through action, through reflection, through unwavering dedication to becoming more. This plan never promised overnight change. It promised depth, alignment, transformation rooted in truth. And now, with 6 months behind you, you carry not just results, but identity. Not just progress, but power. There's a question most people never stop long enough to ask. What do I want to do with the life I've just reclaimed? Month 6 isn't just about wrapping up a journey. It's the gateway into a new way of living. Actually, at this point, the plan you committed to has done more than reorganize your calendar. It's reshaped your identity, rewired your mind, and rebuilt your emotional relationship with growth. But now, the terrain shifts. The path isn't being paved for you anymore. It's time to lead it with vision, not fear. The world around you might look the same, but you don't move through it the same way. The things that used to steal your focus, your confidence, your peace, they no longer hold power over you, not because you learned how to avoid them, but because you faced them. And in facing them, you transformed. That's a different kind of strength. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's unshakable. Bob Proctor said, you can do anything you want. The only limits in our lives are those we impose on ourselves. This isn't a motivational line. It's a spiritual principle. You've lived it for 6 months. You've witnessed how thoughts become form, how belief shapes behavior, and how clarity magnetizes opportunity. But here's the hidden truth. The process doesn't get easier. You become more equipped. What once felt like a wall now feels like a step, because your perception has evolved. You're no longer reacting to life. You're directing it. Now it's time to ask yourself deeper questions. The kind that don't just challenge what you do, but who you're choosing to become. Who benefits from your growth? What kind of legacy do you want to leave, even in small, quiet ways? Are you willing to raise your standard again, not out of dissatisfaction, but out of reverence for your own potential? That's the soul of long-term transformation. It's not a one-time pivot. It's a lifelong dialogue between your present and your possible, and you're no longer a spectator in that conversation. You're a co-author. So, as you reflect on everything this plan has initiated, recognize the emotional architecture you've built, This isn't surface level motivation. This is deep emotional resilience. You now understand the patterns of your fear, the habits of your procrastination, the lies of your doubt, and in understanding them, you've removed their grip. This is where impact begins. Not when you achieve something impressive, but when you become someone intentional. And you've done that brick by brick, belief by belief. You've rebuilt a version of you that isn't afraid to take up space, speak boldly, dream bigger, and lead with integrity. One of Bob Proctor's most powerful teachings was this: if you can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. And now you can hold it because you've held the vision long enough to shape your world around it. This isn't daydreaming. This is strategic manifestation rooted in daily conscious effort. You didn't wait for conditions to be perfect. You acted from belief. That's what changes reality. But here's what most people don't realize. Success doesn't end with achievement. It begins with it. Now that you've reached this new level of clarity and capability, you face a different question. Can I sustain this with grace? Because it's easy to show up when things are exciting, when momentum is high, when validation is flowing. The real mastery is showing up even when no one's watching, when the results plateau, when the applause fades, when the next mountain hasn't yet revealed itself. And that's where the 6-month plan transitions from structure to sovereignty. You no longer need external accountability. You've built internal leadership. You've stopped outsourcing discipline. It lives in you now. You know what's required? You've already proven that what you choose to do next is not about ability, it's about alignment with purpose. At this stage, it's tempting to chase bigger just because you can. But power without direction becomes chaos. So pause, ask yourself, what does real success look like to me now? Maybe it's not more. Maybe it's deeper. Maybe it's about building something slower, but more meaningful. Maybe it's about helping others rise. Maybe it's about rest, healing, integration. You don't owe anyone the version of success they expect from you. You only owe yourself the honesty to pursue what sets your soul on fire. That's the gift of doing the work. You no longer chase life from a place of lack. You create from overflow and creation. Real creation is sacred. It requires vision, patience, and most of all, belief. Belief that you are the source, not the seeker. Belief that what's meant for you expands through you, not outside of you. This isn't about ego, it's about service. When you commit to growth, you expand your capacity to serve, to lead your family differently, to show up for your community with clarity, to inspire not through words, but by your being. That's real influence, and that's what you're stepping into now. The plan gave you structure, but now your intuition takes the lead. You begin to trust the nudges, the quiet whispers, the inner pull towards something greater. You're no longer looking for blueprints, you're building your own. And in doing that, you become the example. Not the exception, but the evidence of what's possible when someone truly commits to becoming more. Bob Proctor didn't teach success as a performance. He taught it as a principle, a universal law available to anyone willing to think differently, act boldly, and believe relentlessly. That's the legacy you now carry forward. And it's a responsibility not to be perfect, but to remain in motion, to never settle, to keep asking, what more can I become? Because you've realized something radical, the journey never ends. And that's not a burden, it's a gift, a lifelong invitation to expand, to evolve, to inspire, not just for you, but for everyone who crosses your path. You're not just living a new life. You've become someone capable of creating new lives through your words, your energy, your presence. That's the ripple effect of transformation. It doesn't stop with you. It multiplies. And you've become the multiplier. You've come a long way. 6 months ago, you were standing at the edge of possibility, unsure. Perhaps skeptical, but curious enough to say yes to yourself. That first step wasn't loud. It wasn't celebrated. But it was the spark. And today, you're no longer standing at the edge. You're walking fully in the life you once imagined because you chose to trust the process and, more importantly, to trust yourself. This plan wasn't just about building habits. It was about remembering your power. Not power in the way the world defines it, loud, aggressive, ego-driven, but true power. The power to choose, the power to respond instead of react. the power to believe even when the evidence isn't visible yet. That power was never missing. It was simply waiting for you to claim it. Bob Proctor often said, the only thing that controls the outcome of your life is the image you hold in your mind. And if there's one truth you've embodied over these 6 months, it's that your mind is the engine. Your beliefs are the blueprint. You've shifted the image you hold, and as a result, your entire life has started to reflect that shift. But now comes the next evolution, maintaining what you've built without becoming stagnant. Because transformation is not a moment. It's a practice, a way of being. It's not about staying in motion for the sake of performance, but about choosing growth even when it's inconvenient, even when no one's watching, even when it would be easier to plateau. That's the tension most people avoid. The space between arrival and elevation. After a breakthrough, the temptation is to rest too long, to become comfortable in the version of you that once felt impossible. But growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from gratitude and hunger, simultaneously. Grateful for how far you've come. Hungry for who you can still become. So ask yourself, what am I willing to release in order to rise? That might mean letting go of roles you've outgrown, conversations that no longer reflect your values, goals that once motivated you but now feel misaligned. Growth isn't just about adding, it's also about shedding, making space, clearing the clutter of your old identity to let the next version breathe. And don't fear this shedding. It's sacred. It's not loss. It's refinement. You've learned to make decisions based on vision, not circumstances. That alone separates you from most people. You're not waiting for permission. You're not addicted to validation. You no longer chase success out of desperation. You attract it through alignment. And when you operate from that space, you create a life that docent to Juslojid. It feels right. That alignment ripples outward. It impacts the way you show up in relationships, how you handle adversity, how you create, how you lead. It transforms your presence. Because now, you're not just living, you're living on purpose. And living on purpose means you no longer settle. You no longer tolerate environments that drain you. You don't justify staying small just to keep others comfortable. You've trained your nervous system to feel safe at higher levels of expression, of love, of ambition. That's what real success is. Not how much you have, but how fully you live, and how deeply you serve from that fullness. Bob Proctor taught us, your purpose explains what you are doing with your life. Your vision explains how you are living your purpose. Your goals enable you to realize your vision. You've spent 6 months building all three, whether consciously or not. And now it's time to expand them. Your purpose will keep evolving as you evolve. Don't cling to the version you wrote down 6 months ago. Let it stretch. Let it deepen. You're more than a title, more than a goal, more than a routine. You are a vessel for growth, limitless, dynamic, ever. That's what makes life beautiful. We're not meant to be finished. We're meant to be becoming. So now that you've become someone new, what will you do with it? Will you keep this light to yourself, or will you share it? Will you lead quietly by example? Will you speak up when others hesitate? Will you help someone else start their 6-month journey? Because make no mistake, someone is watching you, a friend, a sibling, a stranger online, and your courage might be the permission they didn't know they needed. This is the impact most people never measure, but it's the one that matters most. Not how loudly you speak, but how deeply you live. You now carry the frequency of someone who chooses intention over reaction, faith over fear, action over excuses. And that frequency doesn't go unnoticed. It magnetizes, it inspires, it elevates. So keep going, but go with softness, with depth, with awareness. Success without presence is empty, but success built on self-awareness, emotional maturity, and spiritual alignment. That's the kind of success that sustains. You've already proven what's possible in 6 months. Imagine what a year could hold. Imagine what your life will feel like when this way of living becomes your new normal, not a challenge. Not a plan, but a lifestyle. And if at any point you feel lost again, not because you failed, but because you're ready to rise again, come back to the fundamentals. What do I believe? What do I see when I close my eyes? Who am I becoming? Let those questions guide your next chapter. And if this journey has moved you, challenged you, shifted something deep inside, don't keep that to yourself. Share it, reflect on it, talk about it, and surround yourself with voices that reinforce your growth, not distract from it. One of those voices for many around the world has been Bob Proctor's. His wisdom continues to live on, not only in his teachings, but in communities dedicated to his message. If this 6-month journey awakens something inside of you, a sense of power, purpose, possibility, then don't let it stop here. Stay connected to the mindset that started it all. I invite you to subscribe to Bob Proctor Wisdom, a channel devoted to the timeless truths that shape this journey and can continue to shape the rest of your life. Fill your environment with the kind of energy that calls you higher, that challenges your comfort, that reminds you daily you were born for more because you were. And now, it